I was digging around on my computer and I was looking for photographs and I was trying to find a picture of something. And as often happens, I go down a rabbit hole because I've got so many thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs and videos in my various photo albums, and they're not organized very well. And I came across a video, and I mentioned this one time briefly in something I did a while back, but many people probably don't remember or would not have seen that video because it was quite a while ago. But about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I was sitting in my living room one day, and I look out the window, and there's a police officer out there. Now, I'm kind of curious what he's doing. So I stand up and I walk around. I walk out my front door, and I immediately realize what he's doing. There's a horse out there in my front yard. So I go walking out there, and the guy goes, "Hey, is this your horse?" Now, I don't know if I look like the kind of person who would have a horse, but no, it was not my horse. I've never owned a horse. In fact, this is a smaller horse, but it was not my horse. I did not recognize said horse. And there's actually two police officers there. And the way I was sitting in my desk, I couldn't see the fact that there's a horse and two police officers because I was sitting and the window is here and I could see out this way. And I just somehow got a glimpse of the one officer. And then when I walked out, I saw two officers, a police car, and a horse. And so while we were standing there, the horse was friendly enough and, kind of wandering around. It wasn't trying to get away from us, but it wasn't, it was just kind of like doing its thing. And the problem, of course, is a horse is so big and heavy that you really can't do a whole lot with them to move them and so on. And the cop said, we got some calls that the horse was just trotting down the road, and we came over here and we're just trying to figure out whose horse it is. And I said, okay. And he said, we're hoping somebody might call and say, hey, my horse is missing. Or hoping somebody recognizes the horse. And I said, but I'm racking my brain. And now I do run and mountain bike a bit in the area. And I was trying to think where I'd seen horses. And the closest horses I could think of were about 2 miles away. And I said, I know there's a place that has horses, but you go down this road, you turn right, you go across a couple roads, turn left, and you go down, there's a horse place over there. They got a couple horses. But then again, I don't know, And the officer said, well, it's okay. He said, well, I guess we're going to have to call somebody who can come and take the horse, and then eventually somebody will claim it, I assume. And so a guy did show up. He had a horse trailer, and apparently he's a local veterinarian who volunteered and said, I'll take the horse in until somebody claims it. And so, can't have the horse just trotting around in neighborhoods. And so the guy came over and got the horse, put it on the trailer, and drove off with the horse. And I did not see the horse again for a while. Now, I did see the horse again eventually. But we'll get there. And so I took some pictures of the horse. I shot some video of the horse. And about a month later, I was riding my mountain bike, and I rode past the place that I told the officer that I thought the horse may have been from. And there was a horse that looked a lot like it there. And I saw a woman in the front yard of the house. There's a house and a barn and a fenced-in area. And I said, excuse me. I said, ma'am, did your horse get out a while ago? And she said, yeah, why? And I said, I think I was there when the police took possession of it. She goes, oh, no. Horse never got out and got involved with the police. She said, our horse got out one day and we were chasing around trying to catch it. She goes, I thought you were talking about something else. And I said, oh. And I said, well, hang on a second. And I pulled my phone out and I showed her the photograph and the video. And I said, but is this your horse? She goes, oh, no, that's not our horse. And I said, really? Because there's a horse right there that looks just like it. She goes, no. You must not be as good with horses as you might be with, like, say, cars or something. But she said, that's not the same horse. And we walked over there, and I looked, and I realized, no, it's not the same horse. From a distance and all that, but she goes, it's not the same horse. I said, okay, now this is just a deeper mystery, because I'm like, where could this horse possibly have come from? So I've moved since that story took place. And about 2 years ago now, I was cruising around my neighborhood, and I saw somebody I'd never spoken to before who was a neighbor. And I thought, oh, I'll stop and say hello and introduce myself. So I stopped, said hello, and while talking to this person, I could see up a very, very, very long driveway. And there were horses back there, and I did not know there'd ever been horses there. I was unaware of the existence of those horses. And now, for the sake of discussion and make sure we're accurate here, I'm going to let you know, I pulled out some maps and some good mapping software, and I figured out that horse spot, the little farm, the little area where the horses are with this person, is, as a crow flies, 3,500 feet from where that horse showed up that one day. But I said to the woman, oh, you have horses? And she said, yes. And I pulled out my camera phone and I said, hang on. I pulled up the photographs and I said, is this your horse? And she goes, yes. Where'd you get the picture from? I go, my front yard. She goes, where do you live? I said, no, my old front yard. And I told her where I lived. And she goes, okay. She goes, here's what happened. She goes, we have several horses here. Some we own, some we board for others. She goes, that's one of our horses. That horse's name is Star. And she goes, we used to bring Star to like birthday parties. Kids could, you could actually pay and Star would show up and we'd give her little rides around and stuff. And she goes, but Star's retired now, doesn't do that anymore. But she goes, we went on vacation one time and somebody we hired was supposed to come over and take care of the horses and check on them and feed them and clean up after them, do whatever you got to do with horses. And we've been doing this for years with this one person who's very, very good. And she goes, the person came over one day and Star was gone. But there was no indication of how she'd gotten out. No broken gates, no open doors, no open gates, no nothing. Star was not there. Star was missing. And so the person, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, so I can't, do this accurately without saying man or woman, but the person then frantically checked around the area and could not find Star, called the police who said, oh, we have your horse. Your horse was found wandering along the road a couple miles north of where you are. And you can come pick up Star. So they went and got Star, who was no worse for the wear, and actually had simply gone for a walkabout, I guess. And so I did the math on this, and I asked the woman, I said, if you had to guess, based on what you now know, what do you think happened? And she said, well, I'm not sure how she got out, unless somebody came by and let her out or something. But there was two different ways that Star could have gotten to the nearest road from where this horse ranch is. And if she took the most direct route and walked a straight line to the nearest road and then up the road and then across down the street where I was, that was 1.2 miles. So she was 1.2 miles from where she lived. Now, as a crow flies, 3,500 feet. But that would have been an impossible walk through all kinds of terrain and stuff that wouldn't have made sense. And the police officer told me that they got reports of the horse on the roadway, and so she did walk up that main road that I suspect that she walked up. It's possible that she could have gone the other way and up a different road, then across, and then up the road, and still been on the road she was reported on. And that would have been a little bit longer, but not much. A couple hundred yards longer, probably. But she was 3,500 feet from home as a crow flies, but probably walked 1.2 miles. And so it was just bizarre, such a weird thing. Sitting at my desk on a nice spring morning, I think it was in the spring, and I see the police officer, and then I look, and of course, it's two police officers, cop car, and a horse in my front yard. Is this horse yours? No, it's not mine. And so the funny thing was that I walked over to the fence because Star was outside and she was at the fence. And I walked over and I'm like, remember me? Remember me? But I had photographs of Star in my front yard and the video footage that I shot. And so this is one of those things where when the police picked her up and she went away, I always wondered if I'd hear about what happened to her, where she came from, or who owned her. But I also thought, eventually I will hear. But I remember asking my neighbors, and they're like, oh no, we heard about that, but we have no idea what happened. And then when I saw the woman out in her own front yard that I thought was the yard where this horse had come from, I thought that was going to solve it. I thought that was, I'll finally get an answer to this, and I can explain to her, oh, by the way, here's where we found your horse. Oh no, that wasn't my horse. And so it was so strange, but it was, I'm guessing, 2 or 3 years later where I was talking to somebody, and then I realized, oh wait, they've got horses way back there. And I was talking to her about that, and I said, how long have you guys had horses? And she goes, like, decades. And I go, really? I go, because from the road, you'd never know those horses are back there. And she said, yeah, but she said, believe it or not, years ago, she goes, we used to ride our horses quite a bit. And I think the road that technically their address is on used to be dirt. But I know she said that years ago when it was much less busy in the area, she said, oh, we'd hop on the horses to go for a ride. And there was also a lot less development, so there's open fields and stuff. And she said, we used to be able to ride our horses all over out here. But she said it's gotten to the point now where we just basically ride the horses around on our own property. And they've got a lot of property, they can do that. But again, from the roadway, you don't even know there are horses back there. So it answered a question and solved a mystery that I'd been carrying around in my head for a while as to where she'd come from. And the owners still don't know how she got out. But it's one of those things. But the horse's name, Star. Star used to do children's birthday parties, but is now retired. And occasionally just goes for long walks when she feels like it. So there you go. Questions or comments, put them below those. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.